Why are some tops like JAX or Fiora super strong early and scale, but others like Aurelia or Kayle weak early? Since lane phase is what makes top lanes stand out, should all champions be balanced in a vacuum? I mean, it just depends on the character, right? Like, if you want to understand why Kayle is weak early, it's because she is quite literally the strongest champion in League of Legends when she hits 16. There are no champions in League of Legends that are better than Kayle at 16, except some of the infinite scalers. Like, technically, Sion, VEIGAR, and SENNA can get better than Kayle at some point. Like, technically. Like, if you look at the best character in League of Legends, it's SENNA. SENNA, like, is, bar none, if you got a million stacks on her, she would be the best character in League of Legends. Because she could kill you from her base. And she could hit anybody on the map from her base. So, technically, ASOL's like that. Technically, ASOL's E will eventually hit everybody, right? So ASOL and SENNA, yeah, they scale better from Kayle. But if you don't count, like, the weird outlier infinite scalers, Kayle is, hands down, the strongest champion in League of Legends at 16. And that's why she has to be weak. She has to be weak in lane because it doesn't matter what top lane is. What matters is, like, that's what Kayle is. Kayle's shape is that she eventually becomes a state of incredibly broken. And the entire game about Kayle is she starts weak and she has to survive, and then if she survives, she pops off. And, like, that's the game. And so if we let Kayle be broken early, then that's gonna be rough. If we're talking about, like, characters like JAX or Fiora, it's like, I would, like, posit that, like, they're not necessarily broken early. They're definitely broken in certain matchups, but, like, if you look at JAX, there's a lot of matchups that he actually really struggles in. And so it's like, yeah, is JAX a scaler? Great. Maybe pick him against people he beats up. But, like, JAX's scaling isn't guaranteed. It isn't free. There's a number of matchups and jungle matchups that, like, he is going to struggle into. And you'll notice that when we nerf JAX, we tend to target his early game. We tend to be like, okay, JAX is a giga scaler, and so when he gets nerfed, he tends to need early game nerfs. And then, since lane phase is what makes top lane stand out, should all the champs be balanced in a vacuum? It's like, lane phase does make what makes top lane stand out, so it does make sense that a lot of top laners are about being early bullies and fighting and popping off then. But that doesn't mean that it's wrong that top has some scalers, right? That adds variance and difference to the laning phase and, like, the game as a whole, and that's a good thing. So yeah, can it feel rough if you're a Kayle main and you're like, my team needs a top laner to, like, pop off early? Yes, but that's the point of Kayle. The point of Kayle is you're giving up that top lane power for something different, which is the best character in the game at 16. So, just depends. It depends on, like, what you're looking for. And we generally think it's a good thing that there are different characters with different strategies that have, like, you know, different interactions with each other, as opposed to everybody just being Darius and being like, we're just gonna smash each other every single game. Another thing is, people sometimes note that Kayle at 16 isn't good. They'll be like, Kayle at 16 isn't good. You're trolling, August. She's really bad. I can't fight tanks. The reason Kayle at 16 is the best character in the game is she combines insane DPS, doesn't mean it's perfect, right? Like, yeah, she has a hard time shredding some tanks, with insane utility. That's why she is so powerful. Kayle ult is, like, absolutely broken. Insanely powerful spell. Being able to target invuln someone on your team, especially yourself, as a carry, very, very, very strong. Kayle's W, if you build AP, is also insanely strong. The amount of move speed you get from that spell, very, very, very good. And so the reason Kayle, like, goes crazy late game, even against characters, even when compared to characters like Kog'Maw or Vayne or Twitch, is because she has a I can't be killed button on a hyper carry that can also be used on her teammates. That's the other important part, is when Kayle is hyper carrying and she gets to 16 and she's in a team fight, her Twitch is also immune to gameplay, right? It's not just Kayle, it's Twitch. It's her Jinx, it's her Sylas, right? Because what the Kayle's bringing is not just personal power, she is also bringing incredible team power. Now, you could say as a Kayle main, well, I don't want team power, I just want to, like, frag myself. And that is a totally reasonable thing to say. I think one of the complexities of Kayle is that she's a hyper carry who is also an angel, and angels should help their friends. And there's definitely a lot of Kayle players who would be like, well, I would give up the ultimate being cast on allies if I could just carry more myself. And, like, I think that's a totally reasonable thing to say and want. But at the end of the day, like, Kayle is an angel. Her theme is about not just herself, but also protection and stuff like that, protection, healing. So I think it's pretty important and valuable that she can use her spells on other people. But it does mean that like a lot of her late game, why she's insane, is about the fact that she also makes it so Twitch can't die. She also makes it so Jinx can't die. On top of the fact that she just destroys you with damage. Another thing about Kayle that's important to note about her damage is that it's magic. Kayle's late game damage is coming from those waves, which is magic damage. You might be like, August, why does that matter? And it matters because very few characters can get tanky against that. Some of them can. Like, again, if you're against an Ornn, he can build magic resist and make your life hard. That is true. But when you're doing magic and hybrid damage as a carry, that's actually incredibly powerful because every character in League of Legends magic resist is lower just by default. They all have lower magic resist. And it takes more build trade-offs often to build magic resist. Because if you're building magic resist, you're not building against Jinx, as an example. You're not building against the AD carry that the enemy team is almost guaranteed to have. And so doing magic damage as a carry, Kayle, Azir, Ryze, Cassiopeia, is like, that damage is a lot more potent than you think it would be. Like, if you look at the numbers on that damage, like, you have to multiply them by a percentage before you compare them to an AD carry's damage, because of just how much you get from the fact that the enemy team will have lower resistances to it, and on top of that, will be less likely to be buying resistances against it. So that's one of the reasons that Kayle also gets like to be very, very strong. It's because she's doing magic damage. She loses to Nasus W? Well, yeah, she should. Saying Kayle loses to Nasus W is not a statement that Kayle is bad. If you're someone who's reliant on attack speed, you should just lose to Nasus W. Also, QSS exists. Kayle is a character who is allowed to build QSS items if she needs to. And so if you're losing to Nasus W, you could potentially, by QSS, immediately cleanse it and then kill him. So there are options there. But yeah, Kayle does lose to Nasus W, and the world is working as it should be if that's the case, because that's what Nasus is supposed to do, is troll all over auto-attack reliant champions with that W. Yeah. And then what he gives up for it is the fact that he has no dash and he has a hard time getting to you. Kayle has a way worse late game for the things she has to give up early compared to Aurelion, Kassadin, Azir, Zeri, and many more. Goncho, you're totally fine to think that. And I think it's a reasonable thing to think, because I definitely think Kayle often feels like her late game is worse. I'm just telling you that in terms of raw power, it's just not the case. Kayle's raw power in League of Legends late game is absolutely insane. A comparison I would make to her actually is Sona, which probably feels a little weird, but hear me out here. Sona, a lot of people don't give Sona credit for like how much insane power she brings late game, but the fact that Sona just has these damage and speed and movement auras late game that she's spamming on 2-second cooldowns is nuts in terms of her ability to amp her team up. Sona, by the way, is not a scaler like Kayle is. She doesn't giga scale like Kayle does, but like the example I'm giving is like Kayle has these like teammate effects that just make your team win, which is very, very powerful. And so if you're saying like Kayle doesn't feel as strong as Kassadin, I think that's a reasonable thing to say. But Kayle legitimately is hands down one of the best characters, if not the best character in League of Legends post 16. That's just the case. That's just how she works. Because of that ultimate. Combined with her damage. And by the way, that might not be true in Challenger, by the way. When I talk about characters, I'm very often talking about the 99%, meaning that what Diamond players and below experience. When League of Legends gets to like Challenger and Grandmaster tier play, it becomes hyper optimized, and that is not the experience of the vast majority of League of Legends players.